Yes.
Pay attention, 'cause you might be doing that next year.
Careful where you point that thing. All right, let's bring this council meeting for October 1st open tonight with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item, Twyla?
Would you like to begin with roll call?
Absolutely.
Counselor Albert.
Here.
Counselor Colby.
Here.
Counselor Ward.
Here.
Counselor Mativier.
Here.
Counselor Bickford.
Yeah.
Counselor Crafts.
Here.
And Counselor Brunel.
Here.
Just as general, the work in order tonight, I've been asked to, the folks that are here for the reading on the firearms ordinance, it's the first on the agenda. If you would like to depart after that piece has actually been voted on, you're more than welcome to. Next item, Twyla.
Good news and recognition.
I have one. It's homecoming weekend, if anybody hasn't actually been paying attention. There's Friday, 3:30, there's girls and soccer and field hockey games up to the high school. 4:15, there's a cross-country meet at Beaver Park. Saturday morning at the high school, there's a boys soccer game, 10 a.m., and football, 1:30 against Oak Hill. Should be a busy weekend.
I'm going to jump on the football one real quick. Sorry, I jumped here, Eric. Last week, our high school football team visited Trape for an away game, and Trape had a little bit of trouble with their PA system at the national anthem, and our boys chimed in loud and proud. Any of you guys get to see that on social media? It was pretty awesome to be part of this community and hear those kids sing that out. So just want to recognize that team. I'm sure we'll do it again later this fall when they start winning some playoff games, too.
All right, I just wanted to recognize new Chief Hagan. He had come over to the Open Door Christian School. They had asked him to go and just kind of check things out, and in case something should ever happen, that he'd get an idea how it's set up and whatnot. And I guess he had the opportunity, from what I was told, to talk to a lot of the kids and stuff, and met with them, and the response was really good. The kids really enjoyed having him there, and it was just a good turnout, and very much appreciated.
I got something, it's not good news, but I'm gonna recognize it anyway. About 3 weeks ago, maybe 4, a good citizen in town passed away, David White. Whitey, and he's gonna be missed in this town, just for his candor, likes to talk, and fix small engines. Well, he is gonna be missed very much. That's all I got.
Anybody else?
I do. I would just like to introduce and welcome Lydia Colston, who is our new finance director. She's sitting in the audience tonight.
Next item, Twyla.
Next item is the public hearing, the outdoor shooting range ordinance. At this time, the chair would open the public hearing and invite the owner to speak, or the public hearing to be allowed to speak after the presentation of the ordinance.
So moved, absolutely.
I'm told I have to present this.
You'll do a fine job.
Yeah. Don Fellows, Chair of the Planning Board. In August and September of 2015, there was discussion around the council of should we form an ad hoc committee to study whether or not we need a shooting range ordinance. And that was because of some difficulties that Scarborough had, and we realized, I think the council realized, that we didn't have a shooting range ordinance at all. So whether we needed one or not was a decision that needed to be made. On November 10th, the ad hoc committee was appointed by the council, and the following people were on it. Dennis Douglas, who's our codes enforcement, Dean Logan, who's from the Lisbon Fish and Game, Robert Jordan, Lisbon Fish and Game, myself, Scott Hall from the Planning Board, Dan Michelle, current lieutenant, or was a lieutenant at the Lisbon PD, and Barry Fuller, who was a citizen and a butter and had some concerns. So that ad hoc committee was formed. The committee did research with, in listening to everybody concerned, as well as getting some NRA guidelines from the official books from the NRA, and came up with an ordinance. That committee passed that ordinance on, and since it's became part of Chapter 70, which is the zoning ordinance, it went to the planning board, which is why I'm here. And it came out of the planning board and with virtually unscathed. A couple of small changes, and I can't remember what they were, but there was one that regarded state ordinance that was redirected to state ordinance in that. And so it came before the planning board, passed the planning board about 45 days ago, and now it's before you for the first reading, and now the hearing and second reading. Just today, it was noticed that we do need, and if you pass it, there'll be a need for a slight amendment, and that's in section 10, and that's where background checks are done, and essentially, it's been determined by the police department that background checks cannot be done under the auspices of the police department. So if you look at section 10, the proposal I would make is that that be changed from the town's police department to just the town of Lisbon in 2 locations in that one section. And if, Diane, that's where you're talking about right there too. So with that slight amendment, I think it's a decent ordinance. What it does is regulates the current firing range or shooting range and any future shooting ranges or firing ranges. Does not affect anything else in the town as regarding using firearms. So if you have questions, I can answer them, or anybody else wants to speak, it's in
There'd
here.
be 2 changes in that paragraph.
Yes.
And even in the last sentence.
You can delete the words police
You
department.
want to make the changes so we can do this in one shot?
Yeah, just
Could probably make that change as part of the initial.
part of your motion later on.
what-
Just
when you-
strike,
All right.
yeah, just strike police department in that section.
3, Town of Lisbon.
Yeah, there's 2 sections of that I count here. The first one in that second sentence, and then the one at the very bottom. That's what
That's
we're
right.
talking about, right?
Right.
Okay, good.
Any questions of Dawn before we open up the public? Anyone?
I'll just kind of reiterate, I know we talked about it last time we met. So Dawn, this has absolutely nothing to do with if I want to go run down to my local sand pit and shoot off 50 rounds, because
This regulates shooting ranges, period.
that's great. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Anybody from the public that'd like to speak on its behalf? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing, please. Move on to the next item.
Next item, audience participation and response for agenda items.
Anybody? Seeing none, we'll move on.
Next is the consent agenda. Any counselor wishing to have any item removed may do so now. Order 2016-222 to approve the minutes of September 20, 2016.
I'll make that motion.
Second?
All those in favor? Those opposed? Order passed, 7-0.
Next item.
Council orders, resolutions, and ordinances. Order 2016-223, the ordinance for outdoor shooting range. This is a second reading. A roll call vote is required.
Do we need a motion on that, or is
I'll
it
make
just
the motion with
the change?
the changes.
With the amendments.
So the motion would be to adopt it and strike police department and add town of Lisbon
Right.
in its place.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Is that a second?
Second. Oh, well, Eric beat me to it.
Norm Alpert,
Good.
second.
Either one.
Eric and Norm, you
matter.
pick. Doesn't matter.
Point.
If there's no other discussion, do you want me to do the roll call?
Absolutely.
You ready? Counselor Bickford?
Yes.
Counselor Ward?
Yes.
Counselor Brunel?
Yes.
Counselor McTevier?
Yes.
Counselor Crafts,
Yes.
Counselor Colby,
Yes.
Counselor Albert.
Yes.
We have 7 yeas, 0 nays. Order passed.
Next item, please.
Wait a minute. Now, if everybody wants to leave, it's over, you can
You're
leave.
more than welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for coming out.
Yeah.
Interesting. There's a bunch.
Okay.
Back to you, Twyla.
Next order, Order 2016-224, the CDBG Micro Enterprise Assistance Program, Lisbon Business Facade Program. Tracy Stuber.
Good evening. Tracy Stuber, Economic and Community Development Director. I handed out to you as part of our CDBG facade grant program. Lisbon received $150,000. Now the time has come to start the next process, and that is to complete the application for the businesses to be able to begin to apply and use those funds and see some work happening. So you have been given the application that we worked on, and also I also updated 2 pages, page 13 and 14. Page 13, the changes that were made on that one was in regards to the 5.2 documentation of cost estimates for work proposed. In speaking with the CDBG office, we're not required to have the businesses give us like 3 bids or 3 quotes. They only have to give us 1 estimate. And by changing that, 5.2 is just as consistent with the other change that I made within the guidelines that states that. So that's all they're required to do, is the idea of giving an estimate of the work. They would have somebody come in, like anybody else, when you're going to have work done, you want a quote. And within that quote, that's what we'll be looking at as far as the type of funding that they would be looking at. So we can kind of look at the budget aspect of that. On page 14, when it come into the deadline, we were very aggressive in working on the deadline. And the reason why is because we wanted the opportunity for folks to apply for it, especially when we have been going through this for a few months now and working with the businesses, and we've had them excited about the facade program. We don't want to lose that momentum. So what we had done, we changed, the committee just met a little while ago, and we made a change on the deadline for submission. And basically now what we're doing is, instead of just having them apply for Monday, October 24th, which is coming right up, they would have the opportunity, we're doing this as a 2-tier. So it would be 2 rounds, and so if they feel that they can't get the information or the paperwork together to meet that October 24th deadline, they would still have another opportunity and do construction probably in the spring later on. And given the deadline for round 2 of January 23rd, we're not sure if we're going to be able to get any applicants or not, but the grant is there. This doesn't mean that if we don't get any for this first round, that the money's not going to be available to continue on, because we have the funds, the grant, to continue on. And that's what we'll do. Basically, we just continue to get applicants and keep going rounds and putting it out there and advertising, with the hopes that the folks will take advantage of that. So, if you guys got any questions, or if
Why don't you take a step back for just a second and give a little bit of highlight of what the actual program's involved for the listening public, to see if there's any interest that you might be able
Okay,
to
sure.
generate tonight.
Basically, within the application, the facade program is with federal dollars. So, of course, we have guidelines that we have to follow within the federal aspect of things. But this is an opportunity for the businesses, especially in the downtown area within the blight designation, that they would be able to apply for a grant if they want to do facade work. It can be doors, it can be awnings, it can be paint, it can be siding, just things that they've been wanting to do but haven't had the money to do that. Within this, the minimum for folks to apply for is $2,500, and the maximum would be $20,000. This is a 1-to-1 match. And what that means is that the businesses would have to upfront the money, and they would get reimbursed back on the backside after the work has been completed, inspected, and meets all the specifications. And then they would get reimbursed back on that. Within the application, there is some certain elements within there. Is one, everybody has to be update on their taxes. So they must have their taxes paid, whether it be personal or real estate taxes. So they can't owe the town any money in order to get money back. So, you know, we want to be able to do that. This is a program that's been around. The state, it is through the Community Development Office up in Augusta, and it's a great opportunity. Many communities have used the facade, and some people have a hard time understanding that. But I want to assure council, as well as the folks out there, that within this process, there are certain things that you have to follow within the guidelines and within the application. It's going to be where I'm going to sit with them one-on-one and really go through the details of what it entails. And within that, the contractors would have to follow Davis-Bacon. Once we know the scope of work that what needs to be done, the committee will get together and then we will bid that out. And just like within the municipality, it would go to the lowest bidder. That's just, you know, how it works within that. The idea of it is that if a business has a contractor that they've worked with, then we certainly want to encourage them to also bid on this. This is an open process, and it's basically for those, again, they have to prove that they can do the work. The idea of it is giving people jobs and still getting the facade work done as well. So,
Thank you.
any other questions?
Any questions?
Yeah, I just want to make sure we're clear on this. This is for Lisbon Falls, correct?
The grant is for blight area. So as part of with CDBG funds, you have to be in a blight designated area or low to moderate income. The folks from any of the other areas can apply for this. As you can see with the map on it, it does, our designation. If others want to apply for the grant, then they have to meet that criteria. And the criteria would be is that they would have to prove, and it would be really working with Dennis and going out and looking at the building. Is this building dangerous? Is this building, where shingles or whatever are falling off? Does it become a public health issue? And within that, if Dennis deems as a code enforcement officer that there's definitely some code issues here, then I would take photos of the property and then I would have to send it up to the state, and the state will, have to go through that process saying, yes, this could qualify and they would be eligible.
So there may be a little more red tape, but nobody's excluded.
Correct.
Right.
That is correct. It is open for any of the businesses, but again, the folks that are in the designated area, they're able to put right in for it is because they're in that designated area. Anyone else can say, look, my building is in real need here, and I don't have the funds to do it. Do you have anything that can help me?
Now, what if nobody else should put in for it? I mean, could that maybe go to another business that maybe don't meet all the qualifications, or?
Well, that would be up to the state to decide, because again, we have to go through the guidelines of what meets that. Anything with CDBG funds, you have to meet those guidelines. It has to be in blight area, or it has to fall within, the low to moderate income or spot blight. That's definitely the criteria for anything doing with CDBG funds.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Any chance we've done research or spoken with any other towns that have maybe used this grant in the past and get an understanding, just their take on what it was like to go through that process that you mentioned in the state?
Well, I believe it's, I think Brunswick, they've been doing a lot of facade over there. When I was in Waterville, we had facade, and it was one that I can remember a lot of the businesses, no, I'm not going to go through this process.
Right.
However, it took one store to do it, then everybody wanted awnings or everybody wanted sidings or, and I think that that's really going to take the initial for that. The businesses that I've spoke to in the downtown area want to really do something to their business. They see this as an opportunity to get some assistance and to see this through. as part of that process, and Karen with the planning board, her and I went together. And as part of that process, you know, I said, look, this is the step that you have to go through because you are dealing with government funds, and you know, they seem to be fine with that. And I know Diane can speak as far as on, you know, I think in Callis, where she was, Skowhegan.
Especially the Main Street in Skowhegan is ideal. You know, only took one or two, and then everybody got on board.
Yeah, and that's what happened in Waterville, the same
Yeah.
thing. You know, you've got an opportunity, for instance, even within the Moxie Store building, and somebody can come in that is really looking to purchase that building, may not have the funds to be able to put in it, but this is an opportunity for them to get some help in that and put somebody in there as a business. So
You have to have some money to put in order to be able to.
they have to put all the money up front, and then they would only be allowed to get up to 20,000 back.
Right.
So it would be a $40,000 project. Anything above that, it would be all funded through them 100%. And the same thing goes within the contractor. If a contractor puts in a bid, and the owner feels, well, I really want this contract or the one that I've been working with, but it's going to be, they wouldn't qualify for that. However, the committee can say, well, you only get X amount of dollars, and anything over that contract pays, then you foot the bill. Because we have that cap, and that's what we're going to go on, is that cap. But they would get that opportunity. I mean, the hard part about this is that the business isn't going to be able to choose their contractor. I mean, they can encourage the contractor that they're working with to go in for it, but they're not going to be able to choose who that is. The committee will work with the business owner and get their feel and what their take is and what they want to do with the property, because, again, that has to be outlined. Any businesses that are over 50 years old, they have to go through the Historic Preservation Office. So again, I got to take photos of the building, and then that's sent up to the state, and the state will review that and saying, okay, well, depending on what they want to do, yes, we recommend that, you know, we want to keep it historically. So this is what they'll be required to do. As part of the grant funds as well, if somebody was looking to do that and needed engineer work or architect work as part of their project, that can also count towards their match. It just can't be 10% over the full total cost of things. So that, you know, there's definitely some room and some flexibility to work with it. And it's really going to be just getting somebody, you know, to take advantage of it and sitting down and going through that process, walking them through that, which is what I plan to do, and help them all the way through, see it through until the end. And hopefully that will give confidence to others that, yes, you know, this will work. It works all over. I mean, this is the opportunity within the downtown plan, within the 196 master plan. It is stated in there, one of the things that the committee has wanted was facade. And I think even with Positive Change Lisbon, they wanted to do some grants and funding themselves as far as to try to offer businesses facade opportunities. And this was our opportunity for Lisbon to have this. And to piggyback on that, we'll know in a couple of weeks whether or not we got the downtown grant. And again, getting 2 CDBG grants is rare. And Lisbon was able to really put themselves in a good position to qualify for both of these grants.
Anybody else? I need a motion.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Anybody from the public want to speak on that?
Nope.
Mike Ebert, 106 Frosthill Ave. I've been following this a little bit, and I have some opinions about it. And I was under the impression, I guess, with the grant funds that people put up. You know, if they wanted 40,000, they put up 20,000. They got 20,000. So now you're asking, from what I'm understanding now, is that they have to foot the bill up front, and then they get reimbursed. So if you have a low-income person that can't afford to put the money in their building in the first place because they just don't have it, now you're asking them to acquire the funds from a bank, which I'm tending to think that if they haven't put the money in the first place, and because they can't afford to, that they're not going to be able to get a loan for 40,000 to get 20 back. So I think maybe that's something that to look into hammering out to get those funds flowing, because otherwise people are just stuck in limbo and go, well, I can't get the money to do it in the first place, even though I'll get reimbursed for it. That may be something that might be a little hiccup in the process moving forward.
I think that's state and federal. I don't think it has anything to do with us.
Controlled by
Well,
us.
It's not controlled by us at all. I think
Right.
that's state and
Administering their program. Tracy? Into the microphone, please.
That is absolutely correct. Anything with CDBGs is, comes at the federal level, and you have to follow those guidelines. You know, it's not always, you know, the best thing, but again, it's an opportunity for those that can take, you know, that are able to take advantage of it. The town also has the revolving loan program as
I was
well
gonna
that can
just say
assist that can assist the businesses, and I've got money I can loan out.
Right. That's what I was gonna mention.
Anybody else? I'd like to thank you and the, is it the Route 9, no, I'm sorry, Route 196 committee that worked on this? Is that the, are you still calling yourselves that? What is the new name? Are we gonna out the committee tonight?
It's a different name. This was the facade.
Yeah.
Yes, but it was the same group of people is what I'm assuming. Okay.
Just different hat, there it is, different hats.
Thank
hit the
you
nail
for
on the
everybody
head.
that had a vested interest in this. I know it was a lot of discussion as recent of the meeting that actually proceeded to get this to where we're at tonight, so. If nothing else, let's put this to a vote.
Those in favor?
Just a regular.
All those opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
Next item, Twyla.
Order 2016-225, self-contained breathing fill station compressor.
Chief. Good evening. Basically, I'm here tonight to, for permission to solicit bids on the self-contained breathing apparatus, which was approved in the last budget that we just approved. So this is that step of saying, hey, can I go out and, you have the spec in front of you. It's pretty cut and dry. It's an exclusive market, so there's the 3 individuals that are on that list are all basically going to be supplying the same compressor. So regionally, they're going to be bidding against each other. And it's the same mother company basically that they're going to be.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
Any?
I just, for the viewing public's understanding here, so Chief, just so we're clear on this, that this is something that was already approved, and the current one that we have, on my understanding, we've been living on borrowed time for a while on that one, is that
Correct.
right?
What happened when we got the upgrades 3 or 4 years ago, budgets ago, for the SCBA's, the self-contained breathing apparatus,
Right.
there was a part of that bid that was supposed to upgrade our compressor. Long story short, there was a numerical mess up on the dealer's part that they were able, instead of actually replacing the whole compressor, they gave us a jockey pump. So we've been working this jockey pump for the last 4 years, which a jockey pump is basically a temporary type situation. So it's working. It's still working now. Let's hope it works for the next month, and then we'll be able to get the compressor in. So it's for our breathing. It builds air for our breathing, our bottles.
So we've been basically skirting this cost for the last 4 years, and now we're just trying to be proactive before that jockey
Correct.
pump finally dies.
Correct.
Great, thank you. That's all I have.
We have a motion on the floor.
Yep.
All in favor?
All in
Ready?
favor?
All those opposed? Motion passed 7-0.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chief.
Next item, Twyla.
Order 2016-226, a request to bid for a 2017 Ford SUV Interceptor.
Good evening.
Evening.
Basically, I'm up here to ask for permission to go out to bid so that we can get a 2017 Ford Interceptor SUV. We would use this to replace the 2010 unmarked Ford Crown Victoria that we currently have and get that off the road. It's up to roughly 120,000 miles. I think it's a little more, but it's hard to tell because the lights don't work on the dash anymore. So the officers will pound on it and the lights will come on for a little bit. Last time we did that, it was 120. So that's one of the reasons we'd like to get rid of that, as well as it's starting to rust out in the fender and wheel wells. So we're just asking for permission. I should note that in my original email, I mentioned 6 car dealerships that we'd be putting out to bid for. Then in the one that I actually put to the council, I listed only 5. I forgot to put Augusta Ford, or you'd notice Quirk Ford. I failed to put them in there. And, but other than that, everything would be the same.
Make the motion.
I'll second it.
Well, you were adding the Bluetooth?
And the Bluetooth, I'm sorry, yes. Bluetooth capability, I checked with the dealerships. It took them a little while to get back to me, but it's an extra request on there. It's a couple $100, and with that, we'd be able to just, now's the age of, computer technology. It's just one extra thing that we'll be able to use, especially with like our new radar units and so forth. We'll be able to just hook up right to everything.
You're up, Chris. Who's the second?
I
Oh.
was.
Roger.
Roger,
Good.
yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Let's,
We gotta go all in
We
favor.
got- Yeah, we gotta vote.
All those in favor? All those opposed? Order passed, 7-0.
Gotta vote.
next item, Twyla.
Order 2016-227, HVAC service contract.
Hello.
How you doing, Ron?
I'll start right off by saying my recommendation for HVA service has changed based on some information we received today. The Thayer bid of $11,950 actually included all that we were asking for in the bid proposal. There was some question marks. Most of the bidders didn't include revisits, I guess. We've had in the past, more often than not, they'll come in, they'll do the preventative maintenance, and we have no heat in the town office, or we have no heat at transfer station or whatnot, even months down the road. That return visit is a extra, pay an hourly charge, potentially truck charge, and blah, 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 blah. The original scope that I put in the RFP, my intention was that, and I've got better terminology that I will use next time, where I would request a preventative maintenance program with reactive labor included, meaning that those repeat visits are included and that we would pay for parts only, basically. Mechanical services, and based on the information I received today, Thayer are the 2 vendors that actually met all the requirements of the bid spec, as well as providing that reactive labor, which is the term I'll use now. To throw the decision even more in your lap, I'll throw this concept out. Patriot Mechanical was a stream low bidder,
Yeah.
which was raised some concerns about whether or not they had the understanding of what was involved with the work and whatnot. And they are the only firm that didn't come and visit throughout the bid process. And they did not include one of the required trips. I believe it was during the cooling season at some of the locations. That being said, their hourly rate of $80 an hour, you compare the Patriot Mechanical bid with the Thayer bid. At $80 an hour, we'd have 93 hours of them coming back before you would actually be spending the same amount of money. So, like I said, to further confuse it, the option of rolling the dice and taking the low bidder and saving quite a bit of money up front and then seeing how it plays out through the year is an option. It was not an option that we were originally looking for when we put together the bid spec, and that was the reason why I asked to have the reactive labor included, was so that way we could have a better feel for the end of the year. We're going to be pretty close to what they had provided for a budget. In years past, we'd had contractors where the preventive maintenance contract was right around $6,000–7,000, and we ended up having $24,000 in bills come the end of the year based on repeat visits and this, that, and the other thing. I guess with that being said, the Thayer bid, they are a local or a closer regional company in terms of their location versus Patriot. Patriot is out of Gorham. Did check some references on Patriot. Their company was started basically with formal mechanical services techs, so they've got, and based on the references I checked on Patriot, they're highly recommended. And I guess that's where I'll leave it in your decision making.
You've never worked with Patriot before?
No, I never worked with Thayer before. Thayer's bid the last few times that we've been out to bid, but never worked with Patriot, never worked with Thayer. We worked with mechanical services in the past. One of the things that I put in the bid spec to kind of curb some of the problems we'd had in the past was a single tech being assigned to our location or our account versus seemed like it in the past, every time we had to have a service call, it was someone new. Siemens has been fantastic from that standpoint. The tech is awesome, and disappointed that their pricing was where it's at because I truly enjoyed working with them from the technical standpoint, but from a contracting standpoint, it really, what we were getting for a contract with them was not, I think, in the most cost-effective solution for us as a town, so.
So did Patriot meet all the criteria, or did I not hear that right?
No.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
No.
So they didn't factor in the return visits.
In fact, I mean, and that would be, if the idea is to roll the dice, I think that the request would be that you allow Diane and I to negotiate what the terms of that contract end up being and go from there. But if you go with Thayer, they met all the requirements. I asked them today, because I really wanted to know for sure that I was getting it right, that, I mean, if I have them come back 100 times, are we going to be charged for any of those times? I mean, basically, as long as it's not something we do
Yep.
to mess up the system, then.
So
then,
Patriot is all the same, with the exception that any return is, you're gonna pay for it. If they come back. for
Correct.
any-
And that's what
But
I'm saying.
everything else is the same.
They did not factor in one return visit. Basically, the RFP requested 2 visits in the heating season, 2 visits in the cooling season. It used to just be, back way up, if you don't mind. It used to just be that the town office was the only place that was under a contract. And it was, every other place was fending for themselves in some respects in terms of maintenance of the equipment. Several years ago, we started pulling that all into one contract, one service provider, scheduled preventative maintenance in the fall, and then if we had a problem, we always, you know, they were on the hook. We called them, we paid, but they already knew the system, and that was their responsibility. And the town office was the only place that really had cooling, so they would come twice in the winter here and twice in the summer, and it was primarily because of the system that we had. Now, the majority of our buildings have heat pumps that have air conditioning and cooling, and heating, so multiple visits are requested, basically. Which is why things have changed a little bit, but. So, originally, I thought Mechanical Services was the only one that had met the requirements. After further conversations with Thayer, by email, so it's in writing, they did indeed include the repeat visits. The only thing we'd pay for is parts.
While the Patriot Mechanical bid, it's appealing, I just think there's too many variables and unknowns. I think that, I mean, for me,
Well, there's really not, though. It's just, they're a branch off from Mechanical Services.
Well, they're not related to Mechanical.
Yeah.
I mean, there'd be somebody that used to be there, right?
And
Started their own-
Yes.
they
but,
seem to have good references as well, which is encouraging, and that's why I kind of said, well, geez, if we can get it for that price, but it sounds like they didn't factor in one other piece, and it sounds like we got a lot more going on with heat pumps and cooling pumps in all these locations.
And I honestly don't think that extra repeat visit is probably much of a deal breaker. To me, it's the gamble of, and it
Unknown.
It happens. I mean,
What about
I
just-
get a call, I come in here Monday morning, there's no heat out front. I have one trick that I can do, and then after that, they're on the hook.
I mean, devil's advocate here too. Thayer is an unknown commodity as well. It's the same thing. You get that trick. If we go with Thayer, and that same scenario presents itself, you call out, and we don't know which way we're going. The only one we know for certain is Siemens because we worked with them before.
Siemens, and we
call?
also worked with Mechanical Services.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Call Patriot to at least ask them to factor that in, what the difference
We
is?
didn't know, I treated everyone the same, we got our bids. Everybody made their proposals, I had AAA provided me with 3 different proposals. Their proposal, and quite honestly, it was their second proposal that had the language that I liked. Their reactive labor included was $19,000. So for them to be on the hook every time we called them back, it was almost $20,000 was their bid. So you want to compare that $20,000 to Thayer's 11 and Mechanical's 13. That's puts you in the apples to apples comparison standpoint.
Can you give us any traffic volume of hours that they had last year with no heating and cooling
relatively static?
I'd have to look back at the repair stuff, but, because last year was the first year that we had quite a bargain for the first few years with Siemens, because they had a hiccup on their end, and they put us in as a comprehensive contract, which means that we were getting everything included.
Pumped.
Pretty much, which was real nice. And last year, they said, well, we screwed up, and this is what we really need to be under, and so we had to pay $4,000 maybe in bills for them, just either treatment plant here, Public Works, wherever, because they're responsible for all the buildings. But I couldn't guess how many hours that was, which is why I was trying to compare if you got, I have a hard time believing we'd eat up 93 hours of time in a year, but I don't have that information. I don't have that information to
Right.
add anything other than just the gut feeling based on how often they actually are here. And they may be here for one, hour or two at a time, but
Does that count, like, 2-3 air exchanges this year, this building alone?
it doesn't count. That is a completely separate.
So that's billable no matter who comes?
Correct.
So in that regard, do we at least get their service rate at $80 an hour versus theirs?
That, for that installation is gonna be, I don't even know if they would do that installation, because that was gonna be something.
It's not
that-
something in their scope of work anyways.
Correct. Right. And Siemens didn't do the whole installation.
Right.
They ended up having to subcontract Air Temp to do the heat exchanger install here on the ones that we've already done so far. It was a combination of Air Temp and Siemens that did the work.
And the only reason I bring that wrinkle in is if we're dealing with what we've heard about substandard stuff installed, how much more is in our network that we're actually going to have come up?
There are 7 heat exchangers in this building, and we'll be on number 3 very soon, because I'm already getting
Right,
pressured.
right.
And then
None of which are
one
covered
more.
under what we're talking about
Correct.
anyways.
The only way we would get to that point is if we went to a comprehensive, and again, AAA is the only one that covered comprehensive, and it may not even cover something as significant as the heat exchanger, but that was almost $30,000 to go with a full, you never have to worry about paying anything. This is your flat yearly cost for everything associated with HVAC in the town of Lisbon. Unless it's a major boiler replacement or whatever, but we've just been through that with the performance services upgrade that we did.
So realistically, we take the low bid and then run into a whole boatload of problems and be right at that number you talk about anyway.
Potentially.
Yeah.
You could, or you could not.
Oh, I
Come ahead
Yeah, I
and
get it. There's a gamble there, but it sounds like, based on a track record of the equipment, it's a pretty safe bet to say that it's not gonna work in our favor. We certainly can expect some.
I would say you can expect some, but after, we've done substantial improvements. Treatment plant has 2 brand-new boilers. The town office it's quite honestly, this building is this is the headache.
It's a 1-year contract, right?
Yeah.
And we already know we have one issue that we're gonna be dealing with, and we've got money in the budget to fix that, and probably one more.
We budgeted $20,000.
Yeah.
My guess, based on the track record, is this is gonna be about an $8,000 repair. That gave us some money in case.
Again,
another
not
one.
related to this, but
Correct.
it's similar,
Right.
it's all one
And we
network.
budgeted $15,000 for this R&M of the HVAC equipment for the year, basically. So, either way, the Patriot Mechanical, Thayer Mechanical, any one of them, we're still saving money over what we budgeted.
Right.
You could save a lot and roll the dice, or we can not.
Thoughts?
So the conservative view associated with it is the 11.5 is a recommendation with the RFP that's sent out that meets the criteria. And the
Mhm.
other one is actually more a pay-as-you-go for something through Patriot.
That and that may be something where we, like I said, if the recommendation is to go with Patriot, I would request the opportunity to negotiate with them and see. It may be we sit down with them and say, look, you missed a visit. Are you going to include that in your original?
That's what I'd like to see.
Yeah, I think that's probably where.
That's what I'd.
But if not, then and if we can't come to what we feel is the
So
right
do we
decision
want
with
to vote
them,
on
then-
this tonight, or do we want to actually have him be able to get back to us for the
I think
following
we
meeting?
should
I want
just table it and let him go back and talk to Patriot.
I'd let them know too that they're in the running, and because if this was just a fluff bid to get it out there to say we bid, and they realize they're in the
Much as
running.
he's been
Been
following
hounding-
up
he's been
to
hounding
find
you,
out
yeah?
if We made a decision.
Well, that's good news then.
Make your motion.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we table it for now and have Ryan go back and talk to Patriot and renegotiate that number with them.
And that's, I mean, I think that's,
Is that gonna hold us up on fixing the other unit?
We'll
when
get
it
you
comes
heat.
to fixing the other unit, I was hoping we would have a contractor on board that could have, you know, so we
Well,
could,
that's the big piece in that regard. It's the billable rate, and that would be part of this discussion with Patriot.
yeah, we can do that. We gotta get, I think that, and I think as part of that discussion, we need to at least get the unit ordered, whoever we're gonna buy it from. I guess, I mean, that's the flip side of this. The first two we did, we just went through Siemens, because one of them went through the contract, and the other one was an emergency repair, because it was the heating season had started, and the unit had failed. This unit that's failed now, failed at the tail end of the season, so I reset it every morning, or every time the manager's wing was
Times
cold.
during the day.
But that's already budgeted for that, so.
Correct.
we need to
Yeah.
go ahead and order
But we
that.
haven't, and again, but my
More than
whole
have
feeling
it
was I
yet.
wanted to have whoever was gonna be working on the equipment involved with that installation.
Set, go.
Got a motion?
I'll second.
Who seconded it?
All in favor?
All in favor?
7-0, order passed.
Thank you, Ryan.
No problem. Thank you.
It's going nowhere. Next item, Twyla?
Order 2016-228, managed IT support services contract.
I really like putting out trucks and everything else, because it's just spec, you bid against the spec, and there's no questions. What we did is, we put out a managed IT support services contract RFP. We received, and I just went through all the ones that I knew, and everyone that I could find on Google that looked like they may have the abilities to meet these requirements. We received 4 bids that we accepted, one that we read but disqualified because it was after the fact. But the 4 bids were from BEK for $98,000, 092, Burgess Technology of $66,948, Roundtable Technology of $53,790, and Systems Engineering of $59,940. SimQuest bid was $69,005, just for a reference. We currently budget $58,764 for this service, between the backup, the police department's support, and the town or the municipal support, we'll call it, everything but PD. Some of the bids were pretty easy to figure out, those being everything but systems engineering. BEK's, well, let me back up a little bit. Systems engineering bid for part of the work, and then added as options what really was the whole point of a managed services contract, where you pick up the phone, you have help desks, and the whole 9 yards. The initial systems engineering bid, which was summarized, and I guess that was what was in the packet. Maybe that's the best thing to do, is just to go right to that part. But systems bid for what they felt they were actually bidding on was their systems engineering secure, their systems engineering net admin, and their systems engineering file protect, for a yearly total of $31,645. They then listed options of SE, systems engineering help desk, as well as, I'm sorry, I'm reading those in the wrong order. Systems engineering, yes, help desk, and systems engineering critical care. And we needed to add those 2 components to the overall bid as well, to get a more of an apples-to-apples bid that we received from both BEK, Burgess, and Roundtable. And based on everything we read, talking to some references again, the recommendation at this point is for us to award the 1-year managed IT services contract to Roundtable Technology in the amount of $53,790.
Questions?
below what you budgeted anyway.
So it's 24/7 support. I see that right here. There's some questions about backup and disaster recovery. Did they give us a comprehensive plan other than just what listed here, backup licenses, off-site storage? So they're storing all data?
Both, it's an on-site appliance, I believe, and a off-site storage.
Do they give any sort of timetable or turnaround time if we had any sort of downtime or something that prevented this facility from coming online, that we could come up online, and what that would be and how quickly we could be back in business?
Systems or roundtable?
Roundtable. I just want to understand the redundancy, so I understand where we're at as far as if there is some sort of a need, how quickly we can have functionality restored.
I don't believe that in the proposal there's an actual time frame.
Okay. I mean, I'm sure that it's there.
It
And
says, yeah, I mean, it says upon,
I think we'd
when it
really
comes
want.
up to backup disaster recovery, the proposal says that Roundtable has proposed a local recovery appliance with cloud backup for backup and disaster recovery, provided an estimated cost in our financial summary below, but would recommend a review of backup and disaster recovery requirements to ensure objectives are met with the proposed solution.
And the thing that jumped out at me in the financial proposal notes is backup DR discovery should be completed prior to implementation to ensure disaster recovery goals and objectives are defined and met by proposed solution. So basically, I like the bid, don't get me wrong. I just want to understand, because it's a new relationship that we're going into, that everybody's on the same page so that we don't have any surprises in the event. That's the last time last thing I want to do is find out that we didn't do what we needed to do on the front end. So and I'm sure you guys will do that, but just, putting it out there.
Well, in the full disclosure, Roundtable Technology, our contact is Nick Knowlton, and he was with SimQuest, and he was a couple of his own companies. He's basically worked with the town for the last 8 to 10 years.
So he has some knowledge.
He has more background knowledge than anybody that bid on it as well.
Excellent. That's good to hear. Thank you for that.
Make a motion? Anybody?
I'll make the motion for Roundtable's Technology, 53,790.
Second?
In favor?
Thank you.
Thank
Order
you.
passed, 7-0.
Next item, Twila?
Under other business, town manager's report.
Yeah, I just have one item. Since the last meeting, I've worked on drafting a letter to the voters to discuss 4 out of the 5 referendum questions. Question 1 being the purchase of the front-end loader, and just give a little explanation on why. And then also we put who is favoring this, like the town council favored this. And in fact, Thursday night, I'm going in front of the planning board and explaining these, and hopefully they will also support these referendum questions. Question number 2 is the paving bond. Question number 3 is the school department major appropriation. We met last week at the school facilities committee meeting, and they voted unanimously to support this referendum amendment. And then following that meeting, the school board also voted on it in support of the amendment. And then question 4 is our part of that is the financial provisions to increase 100,000 to 250,000, the cost per unit for us without having to go to referendum. That's the same as the schools change. And again, I'm going to go in front of the planning board Thursday night. My plan is to finalize this once I find out what the planning board, if they even want to vote on it, and then start distributing this to the public and doing some education. I think it's going to be too costly for us to do a mailing, even at the bulk rate, because you're talking like over 4,000 and you're talking over $1,000 to do it. And I don't have the money in the budget, and quite frankly, I think if we do social media, have it out there so the girls can distribute, and other places, and do some education, I think we can get the point across, hopefully.
Hand out right at the town office here?
Yeah,
Or?
yeah.
I would say anything that we could actually do that doesn't incur additional cost to actually
Exactly.
be involved in that, would be the way to go by
Trying
any
to keep it
stretch.
to one page and keep it simple, because people are not gonna wanna read a whole bunch of reading, a whole bunch of material, so.
It's bad
we're just
enough what
trying
they
to
gotta read in the booth
hit
that
the
day.
high points on why we're proposing these amendments, and for the bond questions as well.
Is everybody comfortable with that
Oh, yeah,
way to proceed?
absolutely.
Just get the word out.
Perfect. Thank you.
Larry has a question.
Yes, sir.
Yes, you're on my list once I finalize this.
Thank you, Larry.
Thanks, Larry.
It's different being on the other side of that, right?
Yeah, no kidding, right?
We, she's been on your list for a while, but that's a whole separate topic, right?
That's all I have.
Thank you, Diane. Next item.
Sewer study updates?
I think Diane just puts things on here every time I come, just so I can stick around. I kind of summarized in my memo the several sewer studies that have been ongoing. The main one being the sewer system evaluation. Ended up taking over a year, and I want to guess I'm close to maybe a year and a half, maybe more. Part of the problems that we ran into with that, well, the contractor ran into, was just getting the weather to cooperate, because they would be in here in the middle of the night taking dry weather flows, basically. Then middle of the night when people aren't utilizing the sewer system, but during a rain event to find out how much water's coming in various locations throughout town. So that was they'd have 3 or 4 different storms that they actually had to have meet their requirements so they could monitor the flow that we'd be getting in from old pipes or whatnot. Basically, they came up with a list at the end of the report, and I have the final reports were delivered today. I've got more copies than I'll ever need. If anybody would like one, I'm happy to give you all one, or if you don't want one, say the word, and you don't have to have one. But I'll give you some understanding of the process they went through, and then the long list of projects at the end, which totals nearly $20 million worth of work. And that's a combination of the sewer system itself work, pump station upgrades, treatment plant upgrades. It's some stuff that, some of the things that were on the list, I'm like, we just did that. But that was over 10 years ago. We replaced the centrifuge at roughly $300,000. That thing's run, that piece of equipment, the way it's run, the recommendation is that it's nearing its time to be either replaced or add another one to have some redundancy. And I guess that's the kind of the state of all of it. We've been spending money on the sewer system diligently for the last 15 years. Pump stations that we've replaced, pump stations that we've rebuilt, but they're getting to their time where they need to be refreshed again. So our last sewer system evaluation was what kind of got us to all through all those projects, and this one will take us for the next 10 to 15 years. At this point, the priorities that we're evaluating are Main Street in conjunction with the DOT project. It's almost a $2 million project for that sewer line replacement, and we would be looking at a full replacement of that sewer system, that sewer main. And then some areas, I'll call it west of Farwell Mill. All those areas feed to the pump station that's at the Farwell Mill, and that's where they identified the most inflow during rain events when there shouldn't be any flow. So we'll be narrowing down those, and at the same time we started the process of meeting with rural development to look at funding alternatives for grants, hopefully, loans more likely, depending on how some things fall together as far as that's concerned. We started going down the road of notifying agencies that were interested in potential projects, but the likelihood is that we'll be regrouping with you, and most likely a workshop would be my recommendation, and kind of go over what the priorities are, how we fund it, and so on and so forth. So that study has been, I mean, it took a long time, but the results are kind of critical for how we move forward the rest of the way. The other studies started off as a simple, the water department wanted to be able to discharge their backwash from the filter plant to the sewer department again. And we'd had issues in the past with high arsenic levels that came out in the sludge and caused problems for us with the disposal standpoint. And that kind of blossomed into, well, this town's makeup is completely different than it was 10 years ago. And let's see, what is our wastewater made up of, and where are we close to limits? I mean, where do we have plenty of room? And that would kind of help us dictate, if we were to see development, what kind of industries that we could support. If we ever see an industry again, pessimist, but. And then again, that once you start talking about that and different kinds of industries, and you start looking at the rates, and the way our rate schedule is set up is it's basically everybody pays the same rate. It's based on usage, but there's no differentiation between commercial, residential, even various different types of commercial operations. So again, kind of all tied together with what do we have for, what can we take, and then how do we divvy up who should pay for it, and then how do we enforce it? And the sewer ordinance, just like every other ordinance, I know that's been, reviewed and updates that needed to be made, that kind of fell in at the end. So we've got several studies that are occurring right now, and some of the stuff, quite honestly, based on our consultants' recommendations, were kind of hinge on the sewer system evaluation and the implementation schedule and how we go about funding the projects and when we do them and so on and so forth. So at this point, the only one that's finalized is the main one, and there'll be significant discussions between now and the time that a budget's adopted for next year at how we approach the work that we have. The good thing is we're just sitting there talking amongst ourselves today. Our current budget could handle doing the Main Street project right now from a loan standpoint. What we have in the budget, we could make the principal payment for, what we would have to borrow on that, but that's just this year. And that means that would be all we pay for the next whatever, unless we do something different. So the potential of looking at rates and how you fund the work that we need to do is going to be a serious discussion that we'll have to have once we get a little bit more information and some different financial approaches that we could take to complete the work. I don't want anybody to think that because there's $20 million of work, it's all, that it's for lack of maintenance or anything else. This is a system that's in excess, in some areas, of 100 years old, and it's been a work in progress. The report, they did a real good job of summarizing the amount of money that the town has invested in the sewer infrastructure over the last 10 to 15 years, and it's quite substantial. But when you're looking at how much it costs to do a mile of sewer main, our goal will be, and has been, will be to line or anything other than open trench sewer repairs when we can. But Main Street, based on its current configuration, will be more of a full reconstruction because there's double lines headed out past where the kitty corner used to be and all that. So from a study standpoint, that's a long rambling explanation, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to.
I think a workshop's gonna be a good idea.
Yeah, so next step is just that. The next step is now that we have the report, we workshop, and that's basically at that point, we can get prioritizing what needs to get done and what the cost would look like based on kind of piecemealing this.
Our goal will be that when we come to the workshop, we'll have a better idea of where we stand with the different funding sources that are out there, what we qualify for free money, and what I don't want to say free. What we
Understand.
qualify for
Grants versus
loans, and then a fiscally responsible approach to how we recommend implementing these improvements.
and that's what certain projects that must tie together as far as, and then how we
Yeah.
plan for
And
those.
And
accordingly.
Main Street, quite honestly, it's the priority from that, or the driving force, will be the DOT projects.
Right.
Which helps us from a ranking standpoint. It's just like everything else that we do, like Tracy's done, like we did with the bicycle and pedestrian trails, where there's multiple agencies involved in the same location, that gets you points because you're overlapping
It'll drive-
resources, if you will.
Drive us up the list is what
Right.
you're saying.
Yep.
Good, good.
And also, you know, if we can do more, the higher the project that we work on, we stand to get a better chance of some grant money. If you have a small project, typically you're not gonna get any grant funds. So we're looking at everything right now.
When would we guesstimate just for the workshop? I'm just, well, I just want to get an idea, understanding.
We'd wanna wait till the new council is in.
Okay.
So we're probably looking at the
I've already
beginning
heard
of
that tonight from a
January.
different
Okay.
source. Why don't you do just that? Get with Diane and get that on the next seated council's timeline and give her 7 copies of that because we're gonna need it for the, going into the budget discussions for sure.
Problem.
Thank you. Next item.
Downtown parking lot and Hasty Street updates.
Well, we finally put to rest, do we or don't we, for the Main Street parking lots. The town attorney was able to find the documentation that was put into place back in '89, I want to guess, for easements that allows the town basically, I'll say it bluntly, basically we have the right to do whatever we want in those parking areas as far as managing them. We can dig them up, we can reconfigure them, we can, I mean, that's the basis of it, is that they granted the town the right to manage those areas as we deem best interest. They did leave it out that if the town ever says they're not going to do it anymore, then they basically revert. But, basically, all those parking areas, we do have the documentation here now, which gives us the ability to do what we need to do from a public standpoint on a pseudo-private property.
So are we still on course to notify all those folks that it's going to be their responsibility to take care of their own snow? Same place, right?
No, we
No,
are-
we're
we
gonna
are on it.
continue.
And they've been notified that nothing will change.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll continue to plow snow if we do
Right.
a better job.
What
And,
about, what about the other one?
I've not been as involved with that aspect
Yeah.
of it, although I do have a draft letter.
We have a draft
My name
letter
at the
that we'll be
bottom of it.
sending to them, and I'm just waiting for one, I just wanna make sure that there's no easements out there. And Dan Stockford's gonna have his paralegal just double check one more thing. Right now, we don't see anything, but there's one other step he wants to take just to make sure before we send the letters out. But it looks like those letters are gonna go out.
Okay.
That we're gonna not do the winter maintenance on those anymore, because we don't own the street.
So that would be something potentially for the next agenda, next meeting?
No, we're just gonna send the letters
Just send it
out
and done with it.
Send
and be
letters
done with
saying
it, so
Right
that they
on,
can
even better.
start making arrangements.
No, because
Alternate plans, yeah.
fall is here unfortunately, so it's gonna be coming sooner than later.
All set?
Thank you.
Awesome,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Next item.
Audience participation and response for new items.
Anybody got anything?
Brian LaRochelle doesn't follow us, and Ryan's here, maybe we can answer it, because been out of the loop for a while. When we actually originally did the performance contracts with Siemens and with the school, I'm more familiar with that, sitting on the facilities committee at the time. There was a lot said about long-term with that contract, with the guaranteed returns, that there were stipulations where if someone came in that actually was operating the system differently, that those returns may not be guaranteed. If we actually change course now as far as with a contract, as far as for mechanical services to actually control our heating, and those efficiencies are not maintained, is there a route, because we're changing companies, that may not be guaranteed? I don't know how that, if there's a problem, and maybe there's an easier answer for that. So.
The only easier answer I can offer is that when we went through the performance services contract, we originally thought we were able to remove our preventative maintenance contract. We were clarified that we still had, the preventative maintenance contract was its own separate animal, if you will. And in the bid specs, it was made clear to all the bidders that Siemens has an ongoing relationship with the town, and that they need to work with Siemens to ensure that all those requirements are met as part of this contract. So I think it's going to be a matter of the new contractor getting with them, but in terms of whether or not there's any legal aspect where Siemens could balk, if you will.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that part of it. Just based on the impression we got all along was that the preventative maintenance contract was this entity to its own.
But what we're hearing is there's no intended change in the way that we're actually approaching it.
Is there a cost associated with that preventative maintenance contract with Siemens? I assume we're paying.
15.9.
Yeah. So it continues on regardless of if we switch?
No.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
No,
Yeah.
that was what we were paying,
Right.
independent of the performance part.
Okay. Thank you.
Understand that, Vaughn?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's, and I guess it would be the test of time to see if it actually makes a difference. I mean, I'm sure if the following year, the efficiencies drop off. Siemens has to guarantee that those efficiencies are there. If they're not, they actually have to pay us back the dollars to make sure our home continues on.
Right.
And I'm just curious if they're not actually in full control, or Siemens still has to kind of play in that game with the other contractor. I mean, you know what happens if it drops off, it isn't their bad, it's someone else's bad, and where does that fall for us? I mean, maybe it's not even a concern. I mean, the idea of preventive maintenance, and as he mentioned, Siemens comes with a premium because Siemens knows every factor in the town because they're the ones that set it up and actually did the long survey and do how do I say, detail the efficiencies of our long-term savings and for our loan. I guess it comes down to the point, they're actually attached to this loan, and at what point do they jump ship if they're no longer the one actually guaranteeing those efficiencies? And I don't really know, and maybe it's just an outside point, I don't really know, there was just a lot of discussions at the time that this was a long-term plan and everything had to be in place for the payback. And it may not be a factor, but I guess when you look at vendors, and you look at a vendor that may not actually, so to speak, maybe have what they consider qualifications, and they're a year that we fall off efficiencies drastically, and it costs us, I'm not sure, Diane, maybe you could tell us what our yearly cost for our loan is, but it was what?
Not right off the top of my head, I can't. But
Lisbon's part of it was
But you gotta-
$40 million.
just remember that the performance contract isn't totally tied to the heating system. It's lighting and other things, so I would think they would have an awful hard time, because I think most of our savings you're gonna see in the lighting.
Which is very possible. It was just one of those things when you start looking at
Right.
vendors, it's just one of those things to look at and make sure that, as you mentioned with Siemens, they actually have to play kind of hand in hand still with that,
Right.
Right.
with that program.
Should be safe at that
Whether
fact.
or not that's something they charge for, I don't really know. It may be a part of that original.
Those performance dollars came back around a couple of times. I know I remember hearing Mr. Green talk about those and how those funds came back and helped out at a different time, and I'm sure they helped out here as well. So it's a good question, worth investigating. Yeah, worth investigating, just not sure where we start.
I know, right?
So that could be part of your approach when you come back.
Thank you.
If nothing else, you're better prepared for your recommendation, whether we go with Patriot or we go with your other option associated with that for the next presentation.
Find out
Thank
how
you.
they, yeah.
Anyone else? Go. He's going to give an alias now.
Yeah. Frank LaRochelle, Lisbon Falls. And as the year winds down for the council, I know there's a few that actually put your papers back in to run again, and I would appreciate that because, as you know, it's a mean duty, right? You know, and there's one person on the council, Roger, that actually didn't put his papers back in, that actually is going to actually leave the council, and I'm not sure if I'll have an opportunity to get back up here for the end of the year, and I want to thank Roger for his time. And there's one thing that we always taught, no good deed goes unpunished, and I'm sure that you realize that now, that sitting on a chair is one thing, sitting on as a council is one thing, sitting as chair, you actually learn the good, bads, and evil of this town, and I want to thank you for everything you did. If nothing else, Roger, we always know where you stood. We appreciate that. Thank you.
Anyone else? Let's go on to the next item.
Under appointments, Order 2016-229, two conservation members. You have two applications.
Can I say something?
Please.
I approached Mr. Maines to join the Conservation Committee because we had incorporated the Conservation Committee and the Trails Committee. And at my last Rails to Trails meeting, they wanted a member of the Trails Committee to start having, to be sitting in on these talks. And so Mr. Maines is also working with, on the Night Solitech project, and I thought it would be good for him to be on the Conservation Committee. So I went and asked him. It would work both ways. And where I'm leaving, and Thompson Trail Riders has designated me the liaison for the Rails to Trails Committee. So I'm not moving on that committee. I'm staying right there. And I just thought Mr. Maines would be a very good fit for that. And where I've worked with him before and understand him, and he understands me, I think it would be good.
Got my vote.
How about Ms. McQuirk? Did she solicit us, or was that a recommendation?
Yeah, she came into the office because she saw it on the sign out front.
Oh, good.
She started asking questions, and she took an application, and then she attended one of the meetings. So-
She's got the background. She's
Yep,
both
yep.
BS and ecology. 2.5 years working for Land Trust Southern Maine, by all means.
And Mark is excited about having her on board, so.
Nice to get qualified folks.
Need a motion for that?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Order passed, 7-0.
Next item.
Council communications.
Anybody want to talk?
He wants to go last, I heard.
Well, he's going first.
I don't think anybody else. I don't think anybody else is going to go.
I got
Yeah.
county stuff.
I'll go. Jump in there.
Unfortunately.
Jump in there.
You go first.
Unfortunately, you guys got handouts that I gave you all tonight.
Yep.
The executive version associated that for the listening public. The county budget committee met for the first time last week. We're looking at a preliminary 7.11% increase at the county level for a total of $9.166 million. Lisbon's percentage based on valuation went down to 6.81 versus 6.84 the last year, but the total dollars with the increase went up to $39,277 for a total of $624,615 preliminary next year. That would be my report. Anybody looking for absentee ballots? See Twyla. They'll be available to be able to do both sides of it as soon as first of next week to avoid multiple trips. If you have questions, concerns with your specifics, contact her. It's coming soon. Anyone else? You're up, sir.
I'm up. Well, I want to thank the town people. It was an honor to serve you for the last 6 years, and I really had a good time. It gets a little emotional for me, but I'm not going to draw it out. Eric is, I'm going to take a hiatus for the next 3 meetings unless a catastrophe happens and I have to come in and vote, but I don't think that will happen. And Eric has graciously accepted to take my place for the next 3 meetings. I can't say graciously, I've had to twist his arm. But it's been a good, and I'm not really going to say farewell because I'm up in the air myself. Will I run again? I don't know. We'll see. I've got other things I've got to do. I'm going to try to keep the chief's old pickup truck running and stuff like that, and that's going to be.
Thank you, Chief.
But I want to thank everybody, and especially the staff of the town. They've been fantastic working with them. Just fantastic. So, that's what MacArthur said. Old soldiers just kind of fade away, so that's what I'm going to do. Thank you. Now I'm gonna make a motion to adjourn.
And I'll second.
All in favor?
Order passed, 7-0.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
all.
Yeah, no doubt.
You're out straight, huh?
Yeah?
I don't know why.
What'd you do?
Bristol and nowhere's close.
It's not good. Stand up, move around. Stand up, move around.
Thank you.
The kids loved you, from what I heard.